Like after you eat, you should wash your hands immediately. You ever eat and not wash your hands immediately? Yeah, the answer is yes, because I've been with you and we've all done it. And occasionally I would say something like, wash your hands, we're Brahmins, right? You ever hear me say that? You should wash your hands, you're Brahmins. And everyone thinks, oh yeah, okay, well, what a brilliant idea. Washing our hands after we eat. Never would have thought of it. And my guru said it. Yeah, that's called Malecha qualification. If you're Malecha, then that's how you'll think. Okay, so I thought it would be good. It would be good if we have some discussion. Maybe I need to clean that lens. Maybe that's the problem. Hold on a second. It's lens cleaning time. For better, for worse. You will see Brahman effulgence for 1 minute, or you'll see darkness of devastation for a minute. I don't think that did anything. Okay, so what I thought we could do was read things Prabhupada said about what it means to be a Brahmin. And then you might think, but I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not initiated as a Brahmin, maybe I never will be. But we're going to look at Brahmanism, being Brahmin, in terms of a foundation upon which Krishna consciousness is built, whether you're initiated as a Brahmin or not. It's a foundation. We'll discuss Brahminical life as a culture, which we're meant to cultivate. That's how I want to look at it. I think that's important. You know, sometimes we talk about, well, what's better, Western culture, Eastern culture, Vedic culture, Vaishnav culture. But then there's Brahminical culture, which is like good for any culture because it's like personal habits, character, cleanliness, austerity, you know, so this isn't Eastern or Western. It's like, you know, we're not talking about how do you dress if you're a Brahmin, or do you eat chapatis or pizza if you're a Brahmin. We're not talking about that cultural. Those are temporary cultural influences. What we're talking about, basically sattvic principles. How does that sound? Sound good? Would you like to learn how to be a Brahmin? Samo dhammastapo socham shanti. Well, this is how you learn to be a Brahmin. After class, clean your room. Clean your desk. Clean your car. If you haven't cleaned your body, clean your body. Multiple times a day, you can take bath. It's just Brahman means being clean. That's one thing for sure. So I'm going to see if I can get my files. Yeah, so I'm going to read some files. It's kind of random. I haven't even prepared before class, but we'll just see where this takes us. As you know, one of the goals of this class is to read from Prabhupada's books. Okay. What to do about my effulgence? I don't know. Just the way it is. Okay. So I'm uploading in chat. You can read along with me, and I will read it from my Word document. So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam. All I have here in my document unfortunately. Oh yeah, it's Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 11th chapter, text 42. Yad Brahma Nityam Virajam Sanatanam Shraddha Tapo Mangala Mona Sham Yamai Samadhina Bibrati Harta Drishtaye Yatredam Adarsha Ivava Bhashate. Translation: in Brahminical culture, a Brahman's transcendental position is eternally maintained because the injunctions of the Vedas are accepted with faith, austerity, scriptural conclusions, full sense and mind control and meditation. This way, the real goal of life is illuminated, just as one's face is fully reflected in a mirror. Yeah, so this is interesting. And if you follow the Vedas, especially the portions of the Vedas that are in Sattva Guna, then naturally you will live a Brahminical life, even if you're not officially initiated as a Brahmin. And yeah, so here in this verse, we have a few words: faith in Scripture is a Brahminical quality; austerity, as opposed to sense gratification; following Scripture, that's part of faith. We have to follow something, some body of knowledge we're going to follow because we don't know everything. Full sense and mind control, that's definitely Brahminical qualification. And especially what I was reading this morning was Prabhupada was dealing with leaders who were having trouble or breaking principles and so forth. And these are people that Prabhupada counted on. So it's very discouraging to Prabhupada when someone that he's counting on is not following the principles. Someone's supposed to be a leader and they're not following the principles. So it's very upsetting for Prabhupada. And as you know, we have a word, austerity, one of the other words that I never used before I was a devotee, didn't know what it was. And austerity means we go through austerity even if we're not devotees, but austerity, tapa, means you do it voluntarily, not by force. You choose to do something where you restrain yourself. So austerity is really the opposite of sense gratification. So mind control, sense control is definitely Brahminical quality. And so you can see just from this verse that the Brahminical qualities are all assets. And these are, in many ways, the 26 qualities of a devotee, but these are foundations upon which our life is based. And if we base our life on Brahminical qualities, it becomes easier to become Krishna conscious. If we don't, then kind of like going to school and not studying and just partying is not going to work. So, if you get in a good university and you're disciplined and you're regulated and clean, you'll do better. So it's like that. These are like foundational lifestyle principles. Let's read the purport. I call this purport imitation Brahmanism. I think this is, the verse I said it was, 4:11:42. Since it is described in the previous verse that feeding a living Brahmana is more effective than offering oblations in a fire sacrifice, in this verse, it is now clearly described what Brahmanism is and who a Brahmana is. In the age of Kali, taking advantage of the fact that by feeding a Brahmin, one obtains a more effective result than by performing sacrifices, a class of men with no Brahminical qualification claim the eating privilege known as Brahmana Bhoja simply on the basis of their birth and Brahmin families. In order to distinguish this class of men from the real Brahmanas, Maharaj Prithu is giving an exact description of a Brahmana and Brahminical culture. One should not take advantage of his position simply to live like a fire without light. So what's important for us here is that as devotees, we actually need to take, this sounds kind of strange, but we need to take a position of honor. We need to take a position in which people can honor us, or honor, we won't say us, we'll just say honor a Brahmin. That is helpful for people, to give food, to feed a Brahmin, to serve a Brahmin. That actually helps people. People become purified by serving a Brahmin, serving a devotee. And so that what it means for us is that we have to become real Brahmins in order that we accept the service. And if we're not real Brahmins, it's just cheating. As being described here, some people will make a show of being a Brahmin and they can make money, get fed, and so forth. So people need to worship or honor advanced devotees. That's how they become purified. So we need to become advanced devotees, and that way we help people, right? Because we become qualified to accept their worship. And how do you become qualified? When you live an austere life, when you live a life of sense control, then when you're honored, you won't be disturbed by it, because it's not your goal. It's not what you're aspiring for. When you live another kind of life where you're aspiring for sense gratification, then you're not qualified to take that because it's what you want. So it's an austerity, but it's not really an austerity for a Brahmin because they're detached. And so you can take honor, you can take service, you can take gifts, you can take so many things. If you're not interested in those things, it's not a problem. And just like a devotee was asking me the other day, well, what if I become materially well off? Then maybe I'll fall into Maya. It depends if you want those things. But if you want those things to use for Krishna service, you won't. It's just going to be facility. Great. We have more facility for service. So a devotee is supposed to think everything exists for Krishna's enjoyment. And if a devotee thinks that way, then when that enjoyment comes, it's not a problem, because he never or she never thinks it's for me. So it doesn't matter what they get. You can get all the honor in the world. They don't want it. They have no use for it. Do you ever get something that you don't need and it's like really beautiful, but you're just like, you don't care about it? Here, Mahatma Prabhu, we have these beautiful socks. They're made in Italy from this fine wool and this beautiful color. Okay, I'll put it in my drawer with my other 876 pairs of Italian socks. Like, I don't need it. So it's very easy to just say, why don't you give it to somebody else? I don't care. So that's how a Brahmin feels. Like he doesn't need anything. I was thinking this morning that so many of our problems would be solved if we were self-satisfied. If we just were like, we were okay we're just happy being devotees. If someone doesn't like you, it's like, whatever. I mean, I like it if people like me. I don't like it that you don't like me, but I don't like it more for your sake than mine, because, I'm like, you liking me or not liking me, it doesn't affect my taste for the holy name, unless I offended you. But we're making an assumption. It's not my fault that you don't like me. So I'm satisfied. And so, it doesn't really shake my life up. I have a lot or a little or sufficient or less than sufficient, more than sufficient. I am internally full. So it doesn't affect me, it might affect me a little bit, but not in any significant way. So if you look at some of the problems you have or some of the reactions you have to situations, I think you'll begin to understand how, well, if I was just a little more self-satisfied or a lot more self-satisfied in Krishna consciousness, I would not even be disturbed by this, whatever this is. Did you ever get disturbed by something stupid? Like it's just insignificant? Yeah. Like you've got nothing better to do than get disturbed by some, your wife didn't put the cap back on the toothpaste. It's like you've got nothing better going on in your life than to get upset about that. Something like that, right? You know what I'm saying? You find something like insignificant to get upset about. It's not that important. So and so said he thinks you're stupid. Oh, like that's going to ruin my life now. No, it's not that important. Yeah, I am stupid. I already know I'm stupid. Or I'm stupid enough to have taken birth in the world. That so and so is right. It doesn't bother us. We just, because we have our happiness within Krishna consciousness, number one. And then also we're just materially, we're like, okay, we're on the ground. We're not like, how should I say this? We're also materially satisfied. Mentally, emotionally, physically, we're grounded. So, these other things are not that important. Hare Krishna. So, mind control, sense control is obviously much easier for a person who's relishing Krishna consciousness than for someone who's not. For a person who, as Krishna describes in the Gita, they've understood themselves as spirit soul, and they think, okay, this is it. Doesn't get any better than this. It's like, you found Krishna consciousness. Like, what? Let's look at this just from a very simplistic perspective. We found Krishna consciousness. Why would we need anything else? Why are we hankering for something else? Yes, I found Krishna consciousness, but I want to be number one in my temple. I want to be the richest man on my block. I want to be the most beautiful girl in my city. Like, why do you need this? There's something wrong with that mood. That means there's something missing in our, lacking in our understanding or application of bhakti, because if we do it properly, we'll be satisfied. And this is interesting. Do you agree with me? I mean, in theory, I'm sure we all agree in theory, right? So what makes this interesting is Prabhupada knew that if we weren't tasting Krishna consciousness, we were going to get deviated and we might fall down, we might go away. And if you read his letters, many, many letters, he'll say, everyone rising early by 4, Mangal Artik, 16 rounds, studying my books, doing service, going on Sankirtan. If we do these routine activities, we'll be safe, stable, strong, determined, whatever. So many things will happen from doing that. So if we do those things, Prabhupada knew we would be full, our lives would be full. And often Prabhupada said, we should be engaged 24 hours, only Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So that means I'm staying inside this circle. Here's the circle. That's the Sarup Shakti, the internal potency. And if I don't, then I'm going outside to the material energy. So if I stay inside this inner circle, then Prabhupada knew, okay, we'll be okay. If we go to the outside circle, then we fall down, we commit offenses, we stop chanting. These things happen, and then all the problems come. So that's why, if you ever think Prabhupada was so, why was he so insistent and so heavy in a sense about sadhana? This is the reason, so that we would be full in bhakti, and then we would be safe, and we would be so absorbed that we would be protected. Okay, so I'm going to go on and read I'll have to post the next one. This next one is entitled Qualification of a Brahmin. A Brahmana must be fully conversant with the Vedic conclusion, which is described in Bhagavad Gita. Vedaischa sarvar aham eva vedyaha. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. The Vedic conclusion, the ultimate understanding, or Vedanta understanding, is knowledge of Krishna. Actually, this is a fact, because simply by understanding Krishna as he is, as described in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma, Shame Dibyam Evam Yobeti Tatvata, one becomes a perfect Brahmana. The Brahmana who knows Krishna perfectly well, the Brahmana who knows Krishna perfectly well is always in a transcendental position. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26, Mam chayo bhyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samadhidhyaitam brahma puriyaya kalpate. If you don't know that verse by heart, you can cry right now. You should know that. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So it's similar to what we just described. So Prabhupada, in this purport, he's just, or maybe this is a lecture, I'm not sure where it's from. He's saying, actually, to be a Brahmin means to know Brahman, Krishna. Then you're a Brahmin. So in that sense, we're all Brahmins. Okay, so I'm going to pronounce you today. Today, you are pronounced Brahmins. I forgot to, did I forget to click the, yeah, I forgot to click that. Today, I pronounce you Brahmins because you know the Supreme Brahman. So you're all Brahmins. Even you're not first initiated, you are Brahmins. Okay. How does that make you feel good? Okay. Well, now I'm going to make you feel bad. Okay. So now that you've been pronounced Brahmins, you have to act like Brahmins. Oh, that's the hard part. The first part was good, right? First part made you feel good. You got, because Prabhupada said you're a Brahmin because you know Brahman. You know Krishna, therefore you're a Brahmin. But now we have to act like Brahman. So this was something that Prabhupada often said, we need to act like Brahmins. Otherwise it's a farce. Because you know why Prabhupada said that? Anybody know why? He said, we criticize so-called Brahmins who wear Brahmin thread but don't act like Brahmins. So he said, how can we criticize them if we also don't act as Brahmins? So now, when we become devotees, whether you like it or not, there's a certain expectation from the public and a certain expectation from the Sangha of devotees of how we should act, right? You ever see a devotee and they're not acting properly and it's upsetting because you think they're a devotee. And if they weren't a devotee, you wouldn't even notice. It wouldn't bother you. Correct? You say, how can, it's like, how can, for a non-devotee say, how could he do that? And say, well, they don't know better. It's obvious. But we say, how could a devotee do that? Because he knows better. So when you understand Krishna, there are expectations. We should be sense controlled. We should control our speech. We should control our eating, our sleeping, all these things. We expect Brahmins to be sense controlled. And sense controlled means that You are in control of your life, nobody else. Your mind's not in control. Your impulses are not in control. Your emotions are not in control. You are in control of your life. That's what it means to be a devotee. And that's why we get upset when a devotee is not in control of their life, because we think he's a devotee. He shouldn't act that way. And when we say he shouldn't act that way, we're always referring to an action in which that devotee did not control himself. Isn't it? Yes? You agree? Like what? He didn't control what he said. He didn't control his behavior. He didn't act the way a devotee should act. So I think it's important for us to always remind ourselves that we are Brahmins because we know the Supreme Brahman and we're meant to act like Brahmins. Now, I know some of us like to say, well, Prabhu, I'm not a Brahmin, so don't expect much from me. And then start saying, I'm really a tamasic person. I'm really a rajasic person, like that. So, that works to make you feel good when you misbehave. But the goal of Krishna consciousness, in case you don't realize it, I will tell you now, is not to misbehave and make an excuse so you feel good. That's not the goal of Krishna consciousness. I don't know if you knew that, but now you know that. Okay? So if you think the goal of Krishna consciousness is just to surrender to your nature and break principles and not be Brahminical and make excuses for it, I'm sorry to inform you, it isn't. That's not the process. The process is to understand what to do and actually do it. And so now that you've all become devotees and you've understood what to do, it's a responsibility you have to society and to the Sangha of devotees to act as best you can. Correct? Whether you like it or not. And I know some of you don't like it. Expectations from ourselves, yeah. This should be your expectation from yourself, to act properly as a devotee. It's good to have expectations from yourself as long as you don't commit suicide, if you don't literally or figuratively, if you don't reach those goals. Then it becomes a problem. Because then you end up hating yourself for not fulfilling your expectations. But yeah, any successful person has expectations for themselves. But it has to be housed in a way that doesn't become a problem for you if you don't meet those expectations within your own time frame or to the level you want to. Then it becomes a problem. It can become such a problem that you give up on yourself. So there's a way to think about your goals where you think, yeah, these are my goals. This is possible. I think in a confident way that it's possible. This is what I want to do. And I may be not there yet, but I can think confidently, this is what I want to do. And I can try to act as best I can, or try to act as if I'm already there. I like to be a professor. Well, let me think that I'm professor material and I will be a professor. And so then I know I'm not a professor today, but those expectations can empower me. But if I don't act like a professor today and I become discouraged about that, that's not good. Discouragement is never good. It's never good. One of the reasons that discouragement isn't good, and I think this is an important reason, is because Maya's job is to discourage us. So don't help Maya. You can write that down, Chetan. That's good for face. Maya's job is to discourage us, so don't help her. Have you ever helped Maya discourage yourself? Probably, yeah. So now we're doing Maya's work. Maya's trying to discourage us, and we say, Maya, actually, you don't have to discourage me because I do that myself. You can go discourage somebody else. I'm covered. I got myself covered. So now we're doing Maya's work on ourselves. Yeah. Don't do Maya's work on yourself. That is sad. Isn't that sad? Don't you think that's sad? Yeah. So it's a good way of thinking, in terms of how you're processing what's going on in your life, how you're reacting to it, and ask yourself, am I right now doing Maya's work for her? Because I know she's trying to disappoint, discourage, and frustrate me. Am I just doing that to myself? Because if I am, I'm doing the wrong thing to myself. No. I never do that. I'm going to do that now. No. Don't do Maya's work for her. I have to tell you something. It's so powerful, and it's not directly Krishna conscious point, but I think it relates to this, just to bring sobriety to this discussion. The body will follow the mind. So if you're in a negative mindset, I'm so bad, I'm so stupid, I'm so this, I'll never be this or that. That is how your body feels. Did you know that? And vice versa. There's a story of a guy who was diagnosed with something. He was going to die. And he watched comedy. He thought, well, I'll die laughing. And he was watching all this comedy and laughing, and he got better. Laughing is good medicine, right? That's why sometimes they have these laughing clubs. Just laugh. We heard yesterday or the day before in the marriage workshop some startling fact that if you are in a relationship with a contemptuous person is a person who always puts you down, who makes you feel inferior. We sometimes call that. It could come out, it can be called different things. It could be abusive, it could be called gaslighting. It could just be shaming. But what they found is because of all that negativity that you're receiving, it's suppressing your immune system. You're becoming weaker and more susceptible to disease. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And so they go to the doctor, and the doctor goes, here, take this pill. But the real cause may be the mental cause. So we have seen, for some of us, we're like predisposed to think of ourselves in negative ways. But it's very unhealthy. And the point I tried to make in the self-care workshop is it's rarely productive and mostly always destructive. And, devotees have a problem. They say, but, you look at the prayers of the acharyas and they're just putting themselves down. But Prabhupada many times said, he used these two words, anusara and anukara. Anusara, anukara. One means to follow, one means to imitate. So I think it's an obvious reality that when a Mahabhagavad is exhibiting humility, we just naturally imitate it because we don't understand it, because it's completely different from what we understand humility to be. Basically, because we don't understand humility, number one. And number two, that level of humility is off the charts for us. So then the problem comes is that we look at that and we think, okay, I'm supposed to do the same thing. So then I go around saying, I'm stupid, useless, wretched, rotten, worthless rascal, right? And that, for the pure devotee, becomes the cause of them surrendering to Krishna, and for us, it becomes the cause of leaving ISKCON. Sometimes, right? Not that it can't be the cause for us to surrender, but it has to be processed in the right way. So if we don't process it in the right way, it just becomes a negative psychologically, negative spiritually, and negative physically. So we have to be careful. That's like it's, reading those prayers of the acharyas, you have to be understood in the proper way because it could be misapplied. And when we try to imitate it and think, well, this is how I'm supposed to feel. Now, I would say that if one interprets those prayers in the wrong way, it's probably how they already feel. And they were maybe looking for some justification to feel that way. Oh, I finally found it. I'm miserable, depressed. I hate myself. I think I'm the worst person that ever walked the earth. But now I've got justification because look, it's right there in the prayer. So I can just read these prayers every day and bathe in my misery and feel good about it. Finally, I found a way, to feel good about my dysfunction. No, so we don't want to use the prayers that way. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Hare Krishna. If you know what I mean, right? We've talked about this before. There's a kind of perverted way of thinking where you find happiness in ignorance. Because, Krishna describes happiness in the mode of ignorance. If there is such a thing, it's a weird thing, happiness and ignorance. The weird kind of happiness. It's kind of like, hey, it's raining and it's muddy outside. Let's roll in the mud, something like that, So my kids could be happy doing that, but, oh no, I have a better example. Let's roll in the gutter. So you find happiness rolling in the gutter. It's a strange kind of happiness. So some of us have a mindset or a belief system that we can only find happiness in misery. We can't find happiness in sattva guna. It's like too pure. Our happiness is in tamaguna. So if I'm feeling horrible about myself, that's kind of like my comfort zone. That's where I feel like, yeah, that's where I feel comfortable because that's how I felt for so long. And if I feel happy, then I feel uncomfortable because I feel like I shouldn't be happy because I'm such a rotten, wretched rascal, worthless, this, that, and the next thing, worm and stool, that I shouldn't feel happy. And there's a quote, I didn't read it yesterday, but there's a quote from Prabhupada. And he was telling the women how they should behave towards their husbands so their husbands will be happy, and how the husbands should behave towards the men so the men will be happy. And then Prabhupada concluded by saying, we should be peaceful and happy in our grihastha life, because if we're not peaceful and happy, it's not possible to be Krishna conscious. Wow. You want me to read that to you? I could actually find it if you just give me a momentito, I'll find it for you. Don't go away. This might be worth waiting for. Yeah. This is a lecture. It's a lecture. I'll actually put the quote in here, and that way you could also download it if you like. These are very important things that soft-hearted woman, Varna Swabhav, they should be given protection. They should be trained up how to become faithful wife, affectionate mother. Then the home will be very happy. And without happiness, we cannot make any spiritual progress. We must be peaceful. This is preliminary condition. That's a heavy statement. And without happiness, we cannot make any spiritual progress. So what does that mean? Well, does that mean Prabhupada is saying, go out to the pub tonight and get smashed, then you'll be happy, and then you can make spiritual progress? Obviously not. go to Las Vegas and gamble away a few $1,000s because that'll make you happy. No, he's not talking about that. He's talking about living in sattva guna. So making your relationship sattvic, making your home life sattvic, making all your life sattvic, then you'll be happy and you'll be peaceful. So basically, Prabhupada's saying, if we don't cultivate sattva guna everywhere, including the most difficult place, which is at home, we cannot make spiritual progress. Here, Prabhupada says any spiritual progress. So he's basically saying, you're not going to make spiritual progress from the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. You can only make it from goodness. And that includes cultivating goodness in all the relationships and all the places, even the ones that are difficult. What do you think? That's interesting. At least it's interesting, to say the least, isn't it? Okay, that was your prize for today, for coming. You got that quote. All right. So I will continue reading, unless you want me to say more about, I'll say a little more about this. You've heard that there was a book called The Comfort Zone. I think it's from the 80s or the early 90s. And the book about the comfort zone is pretty easy to understand, is that certain ways of thinking and certain behaviors, which we have done for a long time or grown up with, we become comfortable with. And so for some people, being unhappy is their comfort zone. That's just like, and they actually, it sounds weird. When you go out of your comfort zone, you feel uncomfortable, obviously. That's why it's called the comfort zone. So outside, so what they say is, if you know how sometimes you have to change something, a behavior, a way of thinking, a way of speaking, a habit, and it's really difficult because you're so used to doing it a certain way. We all have had that experience, right? And when you try to do it this new way, this new behavior, it's really uncomfortable because you've never done it before, or you've done the other way for so long. It would be like, let's say you're a tennis player, and I say, okay, now we're going to play tennis, but you have to play with your opposite hand. So how uncomfortable would that be? You'd always want to go, I'm right-handed, so I'd always want to go to my right hand. He said, no, you have to play with your left hand. I was like, but I can't really play. It's uncomfortable. So some people's right hand is unhappiness and putting themselves down and so forth. And Prabhupada's saying, we should be happy in Krishna consciousness. Some devotees have a difficult time with that. I don't feel I should be. I don't feel qualified. It's, all the excuses come out. But I think beyond the excuses, what it is that it's out of their comfort zone, which is, it's a very interesting position, isn't it? Like being happy is like, it's out of my comfort zone. I've never been happy. I feel like I'm a bad devotee. I should be unhappy. But the reason I was saying, Hari Bhakti, that we don't want to make ourselves feel bad, number one reason is because it doesn't really help. And number two, it is not what Prabhupada taught us. Prabhupada might have chastised us, or he might have taught us humility, but he didn't teach us to feel bad. And you may know the story when Prabhupada was chastised by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Prabhupada, in reflecting on that, said that was like the greatest blessing of my life. That Prabhupada took it that way. So a devotee takes everything in anything that's purifying. It's very positive. And it's my great happiness. I was chastised by my guru. He gave me some of his attention and his time, my great happiness. So yeah, anyway, I think you understand the idea. Now, easy to understand, more difficult to follow, but I've said many times, and I want to say it now because it's really important. if you're in this mood, or you know anyone in this mood of who feels uncomfortable, who feels more comfortable being unhappy, feels more comfortable like having problems. Like for some people, having problems is a comfort zone. It's kind of an identity. Like what am I going to do if I don't have problems? I lose my identity. And then how will I get any sympathy from anybody if I don't have any problems? I like sympathy, so I'll just keep having problems so I can get sympathy. Some people actually create problems unconsciously because they get sympathy from other people in some way. They'll get compassion from other people in some way for having problems. Gives them an excuse for being weak, gives them an excuse for not living up to a certain standard. So there may be many reasons that we have problems. But it's not the way Prabhupada trained us to be or to think. And I think sometimes devotees think it is. This is the way our Shastras teach us. But I can guarantee you, it's not the way Prabhupada wants us to be. So it's very important, if any of us have that tendency to kind of sink into a more sad state and a more self-denigrating state, to think, this is not how Prabhupada wants me to feel. It's not, and it's not the way Krishna consciousness, that one is supposed to feel in Krishna consciousness. It looks like that. The acharyas are they're lamenting, and the songs have the title Lamentation. But Chinmaya Rasa, the spiritual world, is composed of Chinmaya Rasa, consciousness, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. It's all blissful. There is no material lamentation in spiritual affairs. So we should never think it's material lamentation. But there are times, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. For some of you, this is going to be hard to hear. There are times, and I'm going to say it because it has to be said, and this has upset devotees, and I was caught off guard. I didn't think this would upset them. But I'm giving you a warning. This may upset you, but I'm just repeating what Prabhupada said. And if it upsets you, I would say that's a real problem. That's something you need to look at. There are times when Prabhupada said, if one is not feeling happy in Krishna consciousness, they're not devotees. Whoa, I said it. There it is. The bomb has been dropped on your head. I believe there's another time he said something like they're rascals, or something very strong. And what did Prabhupada mean by that? He meant that if you're properly executing devotional service, you'll be happy. If you're, rising early, chanting and all that. And so if you're doing all those things and you're not happy, that's probably a psychological process where your comfort zone is unhappiness and you're afraid to be happy for some reason. It could be. I don't know for sure, but it could be. So I just wanted to throw that out. So if you have this inclination, propensity to feel bad, you can feel bad in a transcendental way where you feel bad but not unhappy. Okay, I will bless you. If you like to feel bad, go ahead and feel bad, but don't feel unhappy in your bad. Because if you maintain your happiness in feeling bad, that feeling bad will be an inspiration to do better so you can feel better. But it shouldn't come to this point where I'm just not happy. That's an improper way of understanding and processing Krishna consciousness. Because the sign, Brahmabhuta Prasannatma, the sign of Krishna consciousness is Prasannatma. You're happy, you're satisfied. That's a symptom. That's how we know. I mean, it's obvious. How do you feel when you go to Vrindavan? Do you feel happy? Generally, yeah. Sometimes devotees have some trouble, but generally we feel very happy. And we know why we're happy. We're in Radharani's lap, basically. So of course we feel happy. Yeah. So we need to be careful about feeling bad. You can feel bad, it's okay, as long as it doesn't make you unhappy. Because then that bad will be a source of inspiration. I feel bad that I'm not chanting my rounds well. Okay, that should be a source of inspiration to improve. I'll answer your question soon. Let's read a little more. Unfortunately, I didn't note where these quotes are from. A devotee is a Brahmin and free from 4 defects because he speaks Krishna's words. Therefore, a devotee of Lord Krishna is actually a perfect Brahmin. His situation is transcendental, for he is free from the 4 defects of conditional life, which are the tendencies to commit mistakes, to be illusioned, to cheat, and to possess imperfect senses. A perfect Vaishnava, or Krishna conscious person, is always in this transcendental position because he speaks according to Krishna and his representative. Because Vaishnavas speak exactly according to the tune of Krishna, whatever they say is free from these 4 defects. For example, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that everyone should always think of him. Everyone should become his devotee, offer him obeisances, and worship him. And ultimately, everyone should surrender unto him. These devotional activities are transcendental and free from mistakes, illusion, cheating, and imperfection. Therefore, anyone who is a sincere devotee of Lord Krishna and who preaches this cult, speaking only on the basis of Krishna's instructions, is understood to be virajan, or free from the defects of material contamination. A genuine Brahmana or Vaishnava therefore depends eternally on the conclusion of the Vedas or Vedic versions presented by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Only from Vedic knowledge can we understand the actual position of the absolute truth, who, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam, is manifested in 3 features, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and at last, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This knowledge is perfect from time immemorial, and the Brahminical or Vaishnava culture depends on this principle eternally. So again, just making this point that we're all Brahmins. And a point Prabhupada has made often is that all we have to do is represent Krishna by understanding and repeating what he said, and also, of course, living. There are 3 things. He said 3 qualifications of a guru, which is qualification to all of us because we're all gurus. We should understand the scripture, we should live by the scripture, and we should teach. Those 3 things. I should understand it. I should understand the theory, then I should practice the theory in my life, and then I should teach others. That's what it means to be a Brahmin, and that's what Prabhupada wanted. Now, I don't know. Maybe you do know, but I'm not sure you all know this. There was a time when Prabhupada said, if someone becomes initiated, that means the person who is initiated, basically first initiation, still really Brahmin, living a Brahminical life. An initiated devotee is meant to be a representative of Guru, representative of ISKCON, is meant to be someone who has given their life for spreading Krishna consciousness, even if we're married and working, but still, the thrust of their life is to give it to Krishna. So then in that letter, Prabhupada said that everyone doesn't have to be initiated, because he was saying, well, if you're not on that level of you just want to dedicate your life to Krishna and give it to others, why be initiated? It was kind of like, why join the army if you don't want to go to battle? I'm like, what's the point? I want to join the army. Why? Because I get a uniform and I get a title and I get a pension or whatever, all the wrong reasons. So it's something like that. So that's good to take into consideration, that if I'm initiated or if I'm going to be initiated or if I decide to be initiated, it's because I want to be a Brahmin. I want to live like a Brahmin. I want to, I'm going to restrict my life. One devotee was saying, there's a lot of devotees that drink coffee and they go out to restaurants and go to Monday movies and like that. And it's true. But that was not Prabhupada's, if that was not Prabhupada's vision of initiation, that initiated devotees would do those things. We're conditioned souls. So we wouldn't be living in modes of passionate ignorance. We would be in Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna means I'm up early, I'm chanting, I study, I do service like that. That's what it means. And my dear devotees, here's another thing to think about, which I think about 24/7, and I have from the day I joined. You ever think about like you're going to do something, but you're not doing it like wholeheartedly, but you're doing, you ever done something, you're not really doing it well, but you're just doing it? Like you're spending time doing it, but you're not applying yourself. So it's not really getting done well. Or, you're using some software, but you never really spent time to learn it. So it's like taking you a long time to do something that shouldn't take a long time. And we have a saying, you probably have a saying, similar saying in your language. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. If you're going to spend the time doing it, you might as well do it well. I think that's good. I've always thought that way about Krishna consciousness. If I'm going to take the time to do it, I might as well do it well. And that's a qualification of being a Brahmin. That's what it means to be a Brahmin and be initiated. I've taken to this and I want to do it well. I want to do it right. And I'm ready to make the sacrifices that are required to do it well. And until I'm ready, I should wait to be initiated. Doesn't mean I can't have a guru and aspire for it. But until I'm ready, I should wait. And maybe it means I'll wait my whole life. Maybe I'll wait till tomorrow. Maybe I'm ready. But, Prabhupada he wasn't upset if someone couldn't do something. He was upset if they promised to do it and then they didn't do it. And there's an obvious difference, right? Someone wants to marry you, but you never said yes, and then you go off with somebody else. But they can't fault you because I never said yes. I never committed. It's not, I didn't think I could just stick with one woman or one man until I find the right one. So I didn't commit. Okay. We can respect that. Maybe I don't like that because I wanted to marry you, but I can respect it. It's honest. So Prabhupada was like that. It's like if you can't follow, if you're not ready to follow everything, that's fine. The whole world is not going to be initiated. They don't have to be. But those who are initiated, those are the ones Prabhupada was counting on for spreading our movement, taking responsibility like that, and especially being an example. So that's important. Be an example. And if you do that, you'll be happy. And that's why I was making the point. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Like if you're going to do Krishna consciousness, do it from Sattva Guna, because it just works in Sattva Guna. And if you're trying to do it from passion or ignorance, it's not the way it's meant to be done. It's like Prabhupada once gave the example, I can touch my ear, right? My right ear. So is this right on your screen? Does this look like my right ear or my left ear on your screen? Right? Okay. So I'm going to touch my right ear. So Prabhupada gave an example, but I could touch it like this. which is quite awkward, right? Or I could touch, I think he said nose. I could go like this, or I could go like that. So like executing Krishna consciousness from passion and ignorance is like trying to touch your nose like this. It's very awkward, isn't it? So you remember that we have desires for passion and ignorance, but those desires make it difficult to be Krishna conscious. And living in Sattva Gun just makes it easy, and that's what we should be doing. And that's what when you're well situated, then that's when you're ready for initiation. That this is what I want to do. I want to dedicate my life to this. I like this lifestyle. I want to be sattvic. I want to serve. I want to follow instructions, like all of this. Like why take a guru if you don't want to follow your guru? Some people take a guru and later on decide, I don't want to follow him. I don't like his instructions. Well, then, why did you take in the first place? Right? Like, what's the point? Hare Krishna. So, I just got messed up. Did I accidentally get out? My computer is. Can somebody speak to me and tell me if I'm still? Yeah.
Everything works well.
Oh yeah, I lost. I'm having a problem with my computer. It doesn't. I have a screen and it just doesn't show up on my computer, only on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to go to the chat and we are going to look. What's in the chat? Wow, my chat has reincarnated in a different format. Okay. Abhinav says, yes, in medicine, they teach us that we have to heal patients rather than treating them with medicine, which involves a lot of work on mindset. Yeah. You give them medicine, but their mindset is killing them. Ladies and gentlemen, your mind is like a pharmacy. So now we have a perennial question. When we ask one another to be good people and good devotees, but then someone says, but what if I'm living with someone who's got the heart of a snake and the mind of Hiranyakashipu and the personality of Ravana and the nature of Vena? Then what do I do? Well, something we've talked about before, and I never really get tired of talking about this because it's so important. Number one, you all know how when you're around the Ravanas and Hiranyakashipus and the Venas and others, how they can make you feel. They can kind of inspire the Ravana within you. Have you ever had that experience? You're around a Ravana-like person and they inspire the Ravana within you. So that's number one, be careful, because that's the natural human tendency, is to kind of reciprocate with behaviors. We reciprocate with ill behavior, right? I get mad at you, you get mad at me. I'm nice to you, you're nice to me. So Prabhupada said something regularly when he was asked this question. He said, you act in the proper way, or you act the way you would like them to act, and by them seeing your behavior, they will change. Now you might be thinking, they'll never change. Maybe that's true, but it doesn't hurt you, actually helps you to act properly, even in spite of their behavior, right? So don't ever give up your proper behavior because they didn't act properly. And probably it's best not to expect them to be any different, but at least you can be different and see. Because generally, people do change a bit when the people around them change. So, but even if they don't, it's our duty to be sattvic and Krishna conscious, right? So at least that we can do. On the practical level, there may be so many other considerations. This is a general instruction that Prabhupada gave. It's a really nice instruction if you think about it. Prabhupada's basically saying, if someone's behavior is upsetting to you, then you should act the way you want them to act. I was thinking about this morning, and I'm sure you all have this experience, that we're upset with another person's behavior and we want them to act differently, but we don't even act differently. So we want them to act in a way that we're not even acting. Have you ever had that experience? Like you're upset with someone, you want them to act in a certain way, and then you think, if you're honest, you think about it and you realize, I don't even act that way, and I'm upset with them for not acting that way. So that's why this answer is so good, because Prabhupada's putting everything back on our shoulders. Okay, you act that way. You do it. They're not doing it, you can do it. So this is really important, because there's so many people in so many situations that could potentially cause you to act in a way which is against your own values, your own integrity, your own sense of purpose, your own sense of right and wrong. It's like that temptation is there all the time. So the first thing is we need to become fixed in our own integrity. This is who I am. This is how I act, no matter how I'm dealt with, no matter how I'm treated. That is very important. It's not easy, but it's important. And the reason it's important is because really that's what Krishna is teaching us to do. Like if you look at Krishna's instructions, he's not saying you act this way only when the environment is perfect. I think the unspoken instruction is the environment's not going to be perfect. And that's why you have to control your anger and your patience and tolerance and so forth, because you'll be in situations that are going to test you. Another way of thinking, when you, in relation with a hard-hearted person, say, this is what Krishna gave me. So what do I do now? Why did he give this to me? This is what he gave me. This is what I have. How can I learn to better deal with it? Now you might say, I can't deal with it. I just can't. I don't know how. Anyway, don't give up. Keep thinking about it. Keep working on yourself. And maybe sometimes distance is necessary. That's another discussion, but this is a general discussion. Of course, a question we can always ask is, in situations like this, okay, Krishna, you put me in this situation, so what do you want me to learn from this situation? This situation is very difficult. I find it very difficult to live in this situation, to be peaceful and so forth. I can hardly tolerate it. What do you want me to learn? Maybe Krishna is saying, you know, You're so proud. I just want you to learn how to be humble and just say, I'm sorry, admit a mistake, like that. Maybe that's the lesson. And you might say, if I say I'm sorry, that person will take advantage of me. Yeah, maybe that's true. I don't know. I can't say. But it's a question for us to ask ourselves. What does Krishna want me to learn? I'm in this situation. Maybe it's a perfect arrangement for me. I just have to see. Yeah. So Samira says, it's taking responsibility about your own behavior, taking your own power by choice into action. Yeah. It's like, we are going to decide what we're going to do. And if we don't decide, Maya will decide for us. And those are the basic two choices. So you certainly don't want Maya to decide for you. I hope you don't. And so if you decide, then she doesn't have to decide. If you don't decide, then but you're letting her decide. So I think that's an easy choice, right? Who should decide? Okay, we have a comment from Facebook. I have slowly understood that anyone else's behavior towards me is a result of my karmic reactions. The best I can do is be kind and continue having faith in Krishna. I have to change my own attitude towards that person in order to be able to grin and bear. Yeah. So that's your answer, Hari Bhakti. Good answer. Is it possible to go back to Godhead without getting formal initiation? That's an interesting question. And I would say yes, but it's not a reason not to get initiated. Because, well, I could definitely say it's possible not to go back to Godhead if you've been initiated. That's easy to answer. Because, it's like asking the question, can I go back to Godhead by sitting in a ceremony? The answer is no. That's, the ceremony is only a formalization of an internal state, an internal commitment. So if I have made this internal commitment to follow Krishna consciousness, to chant 16 rounds, to follow the four principles, to follow my guru, and I have a guru and I have a good relation, then there's no reason not to take initiation. If one has any doubt, one can wait. But Prabhupada said, once I make that commitment to follow, that's my initiation. That's the real initiation. So the initiation ceremony is actually not the real initiation. We think it is, but it's not. It's the internal commitment, that's the realization. And that's the real initiation. And the initiation ceremony is the formalization of that commitment. So I've committed. Now externally, I'm going to have a ceremony and make this commitment. And the process is to change one's name to a Krishna conscious name. So one's name will change. But in terms of the connection with the guru and your determination to follow, that already is meant to happen before the initiation, not as a result of it. So Oli and Elvira said, if you decide not to decide, you've decided to let Maya decide. And there's another one, to not decide is also a decision. What do you think, Prabhu? I've decided not to decide. I've decided that I don't know what to think. Okay, that's it. When you don't decide, that's a decision. Decision to let Maya decide for you. Right? Corpreet says, if one is a very calm person and relates to a person who tends to anger and from there manifest aggression, one continues to maintain the example of calm to handle things, but the other person does not change in his anger. Where is the limit of tolerance, especially if despite everything one loves that person, but the conditioning of the other person is too strong to change it? Well, the bottom line for every decision is, how is this helping us in our spiritual life? So there are cases where our tolerance can be the cause of a person committing offenses and abusing us, which is not going to be good for that person and probably not good for us. So that could be a consideration. Okay, I'm very tolerant and nice, and this person is continually offending me. So probably I need some distance to prevent this toxicity. And people do change. So it's not that in the future that person won't change. It won't be different. People do change. So that's something to consider. But for some devotees, they can be abused and they can remain tolerant, and it doesn't bother them. They'll just remain tolerant forever. And maybe for you, Gaurapriya, you'll hit a point where you can't remain tolerant forever, and you just say this is like harmful for me or harmful for them. So it's not that you become intolerant; it's just that you no longer accept their abuse. So within humility and tolerance, there are limits. And we determine that limitation by if this is going to be harmful for us or harmful for others or harmful for our movement. Krishna Premi is, so there's a question from Facebook. Is there a difference between acting good no matter what, out of pure intentions or ego to look good for others? If the motive is the latter, should we still do it until it becomes pure? Zach is saying, this is an interesting question because he's saying, should I always act properly even if the motivation is coming from false ego? The answer is, what are your options? Going to sleep and doing nothing? It depends what that action is. Okay, let's use book distribution. Should I go out on book distribution or should I wait till my intentions are pure? And general answer you'll get is you go out, you'll get purified, and that will purify your intentions. The perfect answer is yes, your intention should be pure in everything you do. So why not purify your intention before you go out? But if the answer is, I can't, I have a big ego, I'm motivated by being number one. Okay. Generally, what we see is that when one does that, they become purified by doing it. It's kind of both answers are there. Okay, party's over. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.